Hello and welcome to GeekVerse Sidequest, your weekly stop for video game news, reviews, and more here on the GeekVerse Podcast Network. I'm your host, Dilmus. Today I'm joined once again by Kirklin. How are you doing today?
Hey, very, very good. Thanks for having me. Nice Monday day today. I guess
Mm-hmm.
breaking the fourth wall for any audio listeners, but no, just good times. Nice, decent weather. Spring's in the air. It's all positives, all thumbs
Yeah.
up, all good times.
I feel like it's a low key kind of week. Like even like the
Mhm.
news and topics we have, I feel like are kind of light. I feel like
Yeah,
nothing's really like coming out or releasing this week. Like it's just a chill kind of week.
which is weird, honestly. For the year that we've been having, I feel like it's just been
Mm-hmm.
like big things after big things. So
Yeah, especially for video games, it's been
yeah,
like nonstop. It's weird to like not have. I mean, we even have new games to talk about this week, but like it still feels like it's not as high key as some of the other episodes. But
yeah,
anyway,
just goes to show the quality of the year for video
mm-hmm.
games, movies as well, but.
Yeah,
Man, yeah, what a start to the year for both of those medias.
definitely. Let's get some. I guess so. Here's what we're talking about today. I think it's mainly going to be a couple reviews slash impressions for two games. One, Dune Spice Wars that I've been playing, and me and Kirkland have been playing Trek to Yomi. Or
Oh yeah.
I haven't actually talked to you at all, so I'm assuming you
No,
got to
yeah.
jump in a little bit. You have.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about messaging you yesterday. I think I'm just like getting your thoughts on. I'm like, nah, I can wait a
Save it for
day.
the cast, yeah.
Yeah.
And then a couple smaller news topics. But yeah, it's going to be kind of a nice, chill sort of episode. But yeah, to get some plugs out of the way, Geekverse Discord, join that. It's always a good time. Make sure to subscribe to the Sidequest feed. I really want to shout this out now. So obviously the Sidequest feed I've always talked about is like where all the video game focused stuff will go, which pretty much has only been Sidequest and then like one episode out of Mana. But coming June, there's going to be a lot of game showcases. There's the Xbox One that me and Taylor are going to cover next week. So if anyone has any predictions you want to get in, send them my way, and I can include that next week episode. And then Summer Game Fest and whatnot that we'll talk about soon enough. So yeah, I think that now is a good time to subscribe to that feed because if you just want to find out all that video game stuff, it might not be branded under SideQuest for some of that stuff since we'll be doing some live coverage and I don't know, just more than a one episode per week kind of thing. So now is a good time to get over there. It's also always a good time to get onto Patreon now, especially as well because we're kind of doing some more Patreon exclusive stuff. After Nine's kind of been this weird thing where sometimes it's exclusive, sometimes parts of it will go to the live feeds, but now we're gonna do some extra stuff over on Patreon. So now is a good time to do that. Twitter's, Facebook's, all that stuff. Thank you to Amanda who makes the music and Taylor who makes the thumbnails for the show. Like I said, yeah, next week me and Taylor are gonna be covering, or we're gonna do some predictions for Xbox Showcase in June. So I'm pretty excited to talk with him about what we can expect. And then I've also previously recorded Elden Ring bonus side quest episode, so I've already recorded that. I just have to edit it, and that's going up this week, I think, on Thursday. So if you want some
Nice.
more Elden Ring goodness, that's spoilers from like the first minute. Like it just immediately jumps into spoilers. So I was happy to finally record that one after beating the game a few weeks ago. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's just get right into it. News kind of light this week, but one thing I wanted to shout out is Summer Game Fest, the kickoff event. All the nomenclature for this Summer Game Fest stuff is kind of weird. But anyway, the kickoff event, which is like the first big stream that has a bunch of announcements, is happening on June 9th. And I wanted to shout that out because we are going to be covering that, which is that Thursday of that week. So we're going to have some sort of podcast. Probably, I guess we'll probably record it Thursday night, so it'll either go live Thursday night or Friday morning. So you can check that out. And then I don't know where SideQuest is going to be that weekend because yeah, this Xbox showcase and then probably some other things as well that are yet to be announced. So that'll be fun. I don't know. I don't think we're going to do predictions here, but any thoughts? Are you excited? Because I think the kickoff show, for as messy as Summer Game Fest is, the quick kickoff show last year was pretty good. Like there were some fun announcements in there.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I feel like I've really just grown to get pumped around like any Keeley event. He puts
Mm-hmm.
on a good show. He has a lot of passion for it. Fellow Canadian, so shouts
Yeah.
out to him. And yeah, it's crazy. Like E3 is just like what turning to dust these days. Like it's
It
just
is.
getting
Yeah.
swept under the rug almost. And then here you have Keeley just standing strong. It's awesome. Yeah, like I remember last year. I think I can't remember if it was you and Travis like did like a breakdown, and I thought it was just like a show of like the Summer Games Fest, and then it started like just months of like more
Yeah.
festivities, or for
Mm-hmm.
lack of a better term. So it's kind of an interesting thing, but because this is year two, like officially, right? Like this is just or is this year 3
I
now?
I guess it is of Summer Game Fest. Although
Yeah.
I think even the year before he did some stuff as well, but it might have just been like he was doing like the Steam Game Festival, which was like kind of somewhat related.
Oh,
So
okay.
I think he's maybe been doing that for a couple of years, but I think last year was maybe the bigger showcase where it's like, okay, this was like pretty much what would an E3 conference be, and like
Yeah.
Elden Ring's release date was in there and stuff. Like it was kind of a big deal and was maybe better than the other showcases for some
Yeah.
people that happened around that E3 time frame. So I
No,
think it's something that
absolutely.
you can't just ignore now. And I think with each year he gets better at branding and explaining what these things are. So
Well,
I think hopefully I think like I feel that's what I'm excited for this because I feel like I know what to expect. I don't know what games are going to be there necessarily, but I expect there will be some fun surprises and things that you were not going to see at the other like specific PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo stuff.
no, absolutely. That's what I was gonna say. Is like now that they've had their like freshman year, like a couple years
Mm-hmm.
under their
Yeah,
belt, they can actually just fix things that they might have had some issues with. But all in all, it's gonna be exciting times. Just hopefully some good announcements, some good gameplay for things that are in the works. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, just good time celebrating gaming, man. I mean, way back when, that's why we started the podcast, just talking
Yep.
about E3, and look at us now. E3's dead. Podcast is still strong. We outlived
Yeah.
E3.
We outlived it, even though it was there for 20 years before us. But we won't count those years; they don't count.
No, exactly.
Okay, moving into the next thing. So this is this has been the year of acquisitions so far. There was a lot of big acquisitions last year, but this year already started off hot with the Blizzard one and some other ones as well. But here's the next one. So Embracer Group has acquired Square Enix's Western Studios. So that includes Eidos and Crystal Dynamics, and I guess Square Enix Montreal is the name of the other studio, as well as some of their IP, including things like Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief. So I don't know how to feel about this one. Where are you at? I guess I think of this one a bit differently in terms of like this isn't some indie studio that kind of got
hmm
gobbled up into a bigger thing, and this isn't like one publisher getting absorbed by another. It's just like some big publisher sells off part of something they have to
Yeah.
another big publisher. So it's a bit different than I think some of the other ones we've seen lately.
No, this one is really interesting because, yeah, just right in the name there, like sells off their Western studios. I think even in the article it said, and this is kind of like my initial thoughts. Well, it's like, okay, if it is a bigger company and they are just like pushing those studios, to
Mm-hmm.
who do you even say the purchaser was?
Embracer Group is the
Embracer Group.
name, and yeah, like they've acquired a lot. I think they got like Gearbox. I think they like picked
Oh,
up the
okay.
Metro series and stuff. Like they've just been more silent, but they're scooping up a lot. Like I don't know
They're
where their
making
money
moves.
comes from, but it's like Tommy Wiseau. Like he just has an infinite amount of money, and no one knows where it comes from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess like an optimistic way of looking at it is okay. They can allocate the resources and just instead of being widespread, like they can just have certain studios really focusing on like a specific project. Which
Mm-hmm.
if you're being optimistic, that's a good thing. Nothing wrong with that. It's still just bizarre. I think the type of acquisition it is, and especially comparing to, I mean, you were mentioning some of the big ones, but just anytime we see an acquisition, it
Mm-hmm.
seems like it's just like for the whole company, the whole product, whatever it is. So definitely interesting there. I'm very curious to see if the quality like shifts. Like, are we getting some game of the year contenders out of these new studios if they can just like focus all their resources on it? Because just thinking on top of my head, like that's like Tomb Raider, that studio, right?
Yeah, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex, Thief are
Days
kind of
X,
like their
right?
biggest IPs. I mean, lately they've released Marvel's Avengers and Guardians of the
Oh,
Galaxy, but
right.
of course
Yeah.
those are licensed things that they don't own the IP for,
Right.
which is interesting because the trajectory, like both those games didn't do so hot. Marvel's Avengers did much worse than Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think has seen a bit of a second life now that it's coming to Game Pass as well. And that game also was like at least critically acclaimed, whereas Marvel's Avengers like didn't sell and people didn't like it. Of course, I'm generalizing because I personally did kind of enjoy the game, but yeah, so they're kind of in a weird spot. And then these other games, like we talked about recently, Tomb Raider, a new Tomb Raider game did get announced, but it's like at the very early stages of development, like they
Yeah.
don't have a trailer or anything. And then Deus Ex and Thief like just been on ice for a while. I guess Deus Ex had a game release in the previous generation, but even that didn't really fly off the shelves, I think. So the IP part of it is kind of strange, but I think, along with this, 1,100 employees. Like that's the big thing, is like you're gonna get these 3 studios that maybe you haven't been doing like huge numbers lately, but at least they're like acclaimed studios. Like they can make really good games and they have a shit ton of people. So I think it's a mix of like maybe Embracer Group takes some of these IPs and actually hands those off to other people that these 3 studios maybe don't either have the bandwidth or the interest to keep making Deus Ex games or something like that, but get some other studio of like maybe some people who played those games and were fans and they want to make a game.
Those are the best type
like
of people to make it. The hardcore fans, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of room to play with this and see where they go with it. Obviously, like I said, Tomb Raider is already in development from Crystal Dynamics, or maybe things switch though when this acquisition goes through, and maybe plans change. If they are not that far into development, they could cancel what they have or shift that over to a different studio. Who knows? But yeah, and I guess maybe worth mentioning is the cost of this one, which feels so minimal compared to some of these other acquisitions, but still like 3 million or 300 million. It's like that's a lot of money. But like even when PlayStation acquired Bungie, a couple months ago, it was like, what is it, 3-4 billion or something like that for like one studio. So and like no IP, like just Bungie or just the Destiny IP. So it's funny looking at the numbers of these kind of things, and I think people are kind of speculating as to why, because Square Enix is selling like just some of their studios, some of their like specifically Western ones. Is that because it doesn't fit in their vision? Is it because they're trying to lighten the load so they can get acquired, and maybe now that price point for them to get acquired is a bit lower in the price range where maybe someone is talking to them. Xbox is saying, hey, we'll buy you, but we don't want to spend this much. So they can sell off some of the other studios and maybe make that happen. So I don't know. That's just speculation, of course. But
it's so crazy to just think about like these numbers. And I remember like in the early days, like back when I would like tune into E3 on my YouTube, like many moons ago, and just like people were saying,
say that as if like YouTube's not around anymore. Like that was like an old relic.
Like circa what, 2008?
I'm still watching on YouTube.
It's like early days of YouTube is what I should have said. Before podcasts, all this stuff in my parents' basement, and just like all the talk of like when people were saying like, oh, video games are like the next $1 billion industry, and it just seemed like new. And then now when you're seeing these like hundreds of billions of dollars worth of like acquisitions, it's crazy. It's hard to deny just the effect that it has in the real world. And one other thing that I saw in that article that you linked was Square Enix Montreal, the studio behind like those mobile Go games. I never played them, but I know at least like the Hitman Go one had like a very unique like art style and just playing style.
I always wanted that game to come to Switch because I did want to
that would be
play it. Like it seems really cool, and I'm a big Hitman fan, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And then one of the quotes from Embracer there said that Square Enix Montreal would continue to develop and operate memorable mobile games based on AAA IPs. So very specific there to like attaching to a good quality IP, which, I mean, it sounds like they're trying to keep things kind of going the same way in that regard. And then the other one was, who was it? I remember seeing maybe Crystal Dynamics, the people that were working on Perfect Dark. If I'm not mistaken, like the new Perfect Dark for Xbox.
They're like assisting with development on that. So it's such a nebulous thing, right? Because we don't know how, like, what percentage of Crystal Dynamics is working on that, or was that a temporary thing that was like they were doing it for a few months and now they're off of that now that they're on Tomb Raider and stuff. It's kind of hard to know exactly what's going on, but that is being helmed by the initiative and was or is being assisted by Crystal Dynamics.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Very, very crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, I think this one's a weird one because I don't really expect much to change or happen. Like I don't think that it seems like Embracer Group, from the acquisitions I've followed of theirs, it's not like they pick up this, they just want the IP and like destroy all these studios. I expect these studios to pretty much do the same thing they've been doing, and maybe, I mean, obviously that hasn't necessarily been that successful financially lately, so maybe they can just come up with some new ideas. But then also, some value can come from these companies because of that IP can be shared around to other people. And yeah, like I don't see Crystal Dynamics or anyone making a Thief game soon, but maybe, Embracer Group can find one of their teams or one of their other many studios they've acquired to pick it up. So, and once again, like this one's different than these other acquisitions because it doesn't change anything for exclusivity, right? Like it's not like we pick this up and now all our stuff's coming to Game Pass, or PlayStation picks up Bungie. What does that mean? The implications? There's none of that here. It's just like these games already came to every platform. They're probably going to continue to come to every platform. So yeah, it is maybe a bit of an unexciting one. And Embracer Group's
Yeah.
weird too because I feel like we just don't have a face for them. Like they just doing all these acquisitions, but no one really knows who these people are.
They sound like a bunch of men in black, like in the suits,
Yeah,
just making all these acquisitions behind closed doors. And yeah, I mean,
there's
like I
like
do.
mysterious Swedish company who's just like yeah wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, you never see their face. They
Yeah.
you deal through a Zoom call with like a voice changer and everything.
Hmm.
But just going back to what you're saying beforehand, how like it seems at least like things will be relatively same, except for maybe like more in the higher end, like the higher up sort of boardroom deals and like the
Hmm.
business side. That's another thing that I kind of get the feeling from this is
Yeah.
just like financially the board members are for before they sold to Embracer Group were probably just looking at like the longevity of
Hmm.
what they could sustain. So maybe Embracer Group again just so they got the moolah to buy the whole company.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just one of those changes, where we see that a lot of times in like different industries, even just like a company like that buying it, but not really changing things on like the front end, just the way that
Yeah.
it's structured on the upper side of it. But nonetheless, it'll be interesting to see if anything changes.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess maybe the other thing that could be fun to speculate on, though I'd have to do some kind of research in preparation, would be like Embracer Group does have all of these IPs from all these studios they're acquiring. I wonder if any of these Square Enix studios would want to take any of those IP and make a game with it as one of their
Mm.
future projects. So that could be a thing maybe we'll see in the future. But yeah, we'll definitely report back on this when there's more to share. But that's kind of what we got for today. And this one, yeah, it kind of just came out of nowhere. A lot of these acquisitions, like things leak a lot in the industry, but I feel like these acquisitions somehow are pretty stealth. I guess there's a, you know, I don't know. I guess people when they're signing these contracts, if you leak this information, it could have effect on the stock market and stuff. So they really
Right.
trying to hold that shit down, I suppose. But yeah, this one kind of just came and went.
Yeah, the biggest one that still surprised me is like the big Xbox acquisition of like just
Hmm.
when it's just a huge number amount like that. It's like how did nobody get like a
Yeah,
murmur out? But again, that's like you just said, definitely
that's
probably
crazy.
affecting stock, so it's a lot more tight, guarded, tightly
I mean, at
guarded
this
secrets.
point, with how many acquisitions are happening, like any random Twitter account could just say like, "Oh, next week Xbox is going to acquire PlayStation," and like
Right.
if enough of these, random leaker accounts are out there, eventually one of them is going to be right, and then it's like shit, like someone did predict this, and then they have like the other random predictions. So yeah, good times. We got this information from the Polygon article is really well done. So shout out to Polygon there. Uh, Kirkland, that's pretty much it in the news. There was also I didn't put this in our notes, but I kind of wanted to just throw this at you real quick. Is that like Overwatch 2? I don't know if you've been following this, but like Overwatch 2, they I guess had like a beta or something
Yeah.
like this that was extended to I suppose influencers and streamers and things like that. And they kind of had that Valorant thing where if people watch the streams of this, you could have a
Mm.
chance for a key to drop, so you could I guess hop in there in the future or something like this. And then I saw an article that was like Overwatch 2's viewership numbers dropped by 99% in
Yeah,
like 1 week or
saw
something like
that.
that. Which, I think maybe the beta is like closed or something like that now, so it would make sense that these numbers would drop off. But
Hmm.
like, dude, Overwatch 2 is such a weird thing because the multiplayer part is just Overwatch 1, and like if you own Overwatch 1, you can just continue and keep playing that. And then like I guess the new thing is like the campaign, but then the campaign's like delayed past the multiplayer. It's such a fucking messy thing. Have you kept up at all with Overwatch 2? And like, what are your thoughts? Because I know we played some Overwatch a few months ago, so I've just been curious what you think of all that.
Yeah, no, it's been one of those things where I have not focused much on it, and no one I really talked to has like talked about it. I did see that one article where it was like
Yeah,
Overwatch 2 viewership drops like over 90% after week
yeah,
whatever, and that's where I was like, I can't believe they even a beta out. Like I feel like I should have known that. Like something
yeah,
on my feed should have been like, hey, Overwatch 2 beta's out, like big deal. I feel like I didn't even know like what was happening with the release of this because like Overwatch 2 it's the type of thing where I just assume they were going to just keep adding things to Overwatch 1. It's
mm-hmm.
one of those PvP type games that I just assume will just go on forever until they make like a major shift like gameplay wise. But yeah, I didn't even know about like the campaign or the fact that the multiplayer is basically the same as the
Yeah.
first game.
Well, they actually
um
have changed some stuff, and so I guess this will get updated into Overwatch 1. And I probably should have done more research on this, but this is kind of off the fly. I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but I think they changed the game to be 5-man teams now. and I think it's like set roles, which they've already been doing, but I think they made it so it's like you can only have one tank on your team and then 2
Oh
DPS and
wow.
2 support. I think is what they're like. I think that's what the big push with Overwatch 2 is in terms of game design and balance is something they're going for. So I mean, I never really liked when they changed the rules part of it because I kind of liked when you could make a sort of broken team of like having like 3 tanks on your team or
Yeah,
more, or just
totally.
having like a shit ton of DPS and only one healer or something. I understand for balance it gets harder, and I kind of fell off, so I guess I didn't feel too passionate one way or the other. But
Yeah.
they are changing some things. I just don't know if it's like okay, you're dropping a player and you're changing like the mandatory things, and then there's like a couple new characters. Like it's not really reinventing the wheel. It's like
No,
it's still the
absolutely.
same Overwatch on the same maps with like a couple new things.
I still chuckle because I think like the last big Overwatch 2, and it's not even big like at all. The last Overwatch 2 news I had like seen, it was at one of those shows, maybe Video Game Awards, maybe Summer Games Fest or something, and someone, this is even before like the acquisition, but someone from Blizzard was showing off like the new features of Overwatch 2, and they had no gameplay. All they had was the character Sombra, who's from the first game, and they're
Yeah,
like commenting on like her look and like, oh,
I
if you
remember
zoom in
that.
and
That
look at the
was so
details,
bad.
it
Yeah.
was so weird because it's like this looks exactly the same of what she looked like in the first game. Like
And like,
maybe
how do
this
you
is a
not show
different skin.
gameplay? It's the same
Yeah.
game. Like,
Oh, exactly. And they're just like talking about how excited they were for it, and then like literally Ghost, and then the last thing I saw was like Overwatch 2 closed
yeah,
beta viewership drops like 90%. I'm like, the beta was even out? Like, come on, like
it's been so
very
weird.
very strange. Yeah, that's a weird one. My hype is just, I mean, it's nothing at this point.
Yeah.
Last you were there last time I played Overwatch, didn't have the best time playing it, and I just feel like my just my time with Overwatch is just
Mm-hmm.
over. I had lots of fun times playing that game, but I feel like it was when you had like a friend group that you would be consistently playing with, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just really like into it, and then yeah, it just tapered off, and now it's a hard game to kind of just jump back into. I feel as well. It's not
Yeah.
like the easiest if you're jumping into Overwatch 1 and like the only people that are playing it are like the people that play it 24/7. So if
Oh,
you're
I know.
just
We
like
were
an
getting
average,
fucking destroyed when we jumped in there to play after a couple of years. I'm really curious on the single player part of it because that's like the
yeah,
other big selling point of 2, and like what does that mean? Like I think the character movesets have depth to them, but do they have enough depth to carry a single player campaign?
right.
Like, is it focused on 1 or 2 characters? Is it like the whole roster each have their own mission? So I think to me that could pull me in. Like I'd be interested in doing that. I think when Overwatch 2 officially launches, like I would jump in there for a few games just to see the changes and the couple new characters and maps, whatever it is. But I think for me, it's like I'm curious about that single player. But as far as I know, they haven't shown anything about that, and that's like
Mm-hmm.
delayed past the release of regular Overwatch 2. It's like is that even happening? And I
Yeah.
don't know. It's a very very messy, but yeah, maybe when 2 officially launches or there's another beta, maybe me and you can hop in and play a couple
Yeah.
games and
There'll be enough
share our
noobs in there
thoughts.
to make me feel better.
Yeah,
Bunch of new
exactly.
players. Yeah, it's weird too because in Overwatch 1, I'm not sure if you're still playing around this time, but sometimes like I think it was either the Halloween events or some sort of events, they had these like special PvE modes where it would
Right.
be like
Yeah.
your team against a bunch
They're like
of,
horde modes and things like that,
yeah,
right?
and like I had lots of fun playing those with friends, and I was always saying that like I really like just how unique each character was, and the story isn't really emphasis at all in a type of game like that where it's heavy PvP. But I'm like, this is kind of interesting enough. Like every
Mm-hmm.
cutscene they had, I'm like, I like this world enough. I like the art style, like the characters. Like this is kind of fun. So who knows? Never say never. Maybe the
Mm-hmm.
single player will look really appealing and get me in there. But definitely not scratching at the bit. I also just like that team fight. What's it called? No,
Teamfight Tactics.
no, Team Fortress. There we go. That's
Team
the word I was looking
Fortress.
for. Like that. What's the genre even called? It's the same type of game as Overwatch is.
I think they just call it hero shooters,
Oh, okay, hero shooters.
or
I
like
would
you
just
could say
call it,
like
Team
objective
Fortress.
based first person shooter, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like it's one of those things. I feel like I played it and I had fun with it, and now it's kind of done. I'm not really looking for
Yeah.
that genre again. Again, anything can change, but it's a
Mhm.
weird one. It's especially with just like the hype that Overwatch 1 had. I imagine the esports still going. Like I
Yeah,
not
it probably
100%
is.
sure, but yeah, I feel like it had enough popularity to just have a long, like or a lot of longevity for
Mhm.
it. But it's still a weird one because I don't see anyone in my day to day that's just, oh, I can't wait for Overwatch 2. Did you watch the
Yeah.
closed beta?
Yeah, I mean, I guess 6 years ago was it like 2016, right, when the first one came out?
One
So
game of the year. It's crazy.
yeah, It's quite a long time ago too. Like in terms of recent games, like that is actually it's kind of an old game now. So
I remember in
yeah.
your parents' basement, you and Briggs like talking about it on a newscast, just quick review of it, and just yeah, good times.
I
How
want to
long
dig
ago that
that
was?
up. I really want to dig that up. I probably have it somewhere in my terabyte, of random
Yeah,
podcast
probably.
episodes. To go
Oh,
back and find
absolutely. I
that.
remember Briggs's nickname. It's so weird how you just remember specific things. Briggs's nickname for that episode was the Cavalry because he was playing Tracer. That
Holy
was
shit!
that's
You
I
have a
know.
memory
That's
of
right.
whatever the opposite of a goldfish is. Like that's insane. That is insane.
The silverfish.
Silverfish. There you go.
They probably don't have good memories either.
Speaking of silverfish, let's take our first ad break and we'll come back talk about the games we've been playing. All right, Kirklin, how about you go first?
All right.
Obviously, save Trek to Yomi, and that'll be our last
Yeah.
topic. But yeah, what else have you been playing lately?
Yeah, so just dabbling with Trek to Yomi. I won't talk about it, but just that samurai like style and aesthetic just got me really, really hyped while playing that game. So I actually jumped into Total War Shogun 2.
Ooh,
You've heard me talk about Total War Warhammer. So
yeah,
same developer, same like game series, but this one is one of their historical franchises, obviously about like just medieval Japan and the different clans and stuff. And the thing I love about Total War games is that like the base gameplay is it's very transferable from like across their game. So I feel like if you really know one, you'll kind of have like an idea of how to just make your
hmm
way through the other ones. Obviously, like some quality of life issues might be there if it's an older game or just Warhammer has magic. Clearly, there's no magic in like historical Japan, at least that we know of. So I just jumping in there and having lots of fun, just having like my units of like samurai and just again like just
nice.
getting totally immersed. And I love those games too because they pull a lot of like historical data like when they make those games. So they'll be if you have a unit, you can click on the detail and it'll be like where in time like this specific unit was have. And
That's cool.
I remember just when I was younger like playing like Age of Empires 2, it had like a history page, and I feel like that's what made me really like the like just those type of historical events is playing games like that and just totally getting immersed in it and just learning about all your different soldiers. That's why I fell in love with Greek mythology, was Age of Mythology. All
hmm
those types of games transferred over. So yeah, so playing a bit of that. Really, I'd never played it before, so I'm kind of again learning like the specifics of what that game has, but lots of fun. Halo 1, I jumped into that one, and it's funny because I knew I was going to be on here obviously today, and I
hmm
think last episode that I was talking about like Reach or just getting into the Halo games,
Yeah. Yep.
you were questioning like apparently some people were talking about like like the not so clean gameplay that the first
Sure.
game had. It's just really
Yeah.
dated, and I can definitely attest to that because I have the anniversary edition, so it's all like or the Master Chief collection. It
Yeah.
has like
Yeah.
the updated graphics and all that stuff, and it looks like polished, like the the what would you call it,
Just the
the
visuals, I guess.
yeah, like the visuals, the textures, that was the word I was looking for. Like they look pretty nice, but like just the cinematics is like this is such like a
Mm.
classic like Xbox like cutscene of just like a military man just like talking, and it just reminds me of like maybe the first Gears, but even like earlier than that, right? Like Gears
hmm
of War, I think that came out on Xbox 360, the first one. So
Yeah.
obviously the first Halo came out with the original Xbox. So dated in that sense, and yeah, like going for headshots, it just feels so weird and clunky. Like I feel like your best weapon is actually just like the assault rifle. It's so funny how in like the
You
later
can
games you just
spam.
like
Yeah.
ditch that for like the BR or the pistol there. But yeah, the assault rifle you just spray through. Like the elites just go down so quickly. So, but again, having lots of fun with that. Just tying in. I'm reading the book Fall of Reach too, so just getting a lot into the Halo vibes.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that, but of course we're reviewing the Halo
Yeah,
TV show every week. So 2 more episodes left, I think. So join us for that. It's been
I
fun.
hope. Uh,
Yeah, we don't
but
actually know. Yeah.
no. And then I jumped into the PlayStation Plus free game of the month. I was super
Ooh,
pumped. FIFA 22. I
nice,
love my
nice.
sports games, and I knew I was gonna get like the latest FIFA. I just haven't had one in a long time, and then it's so nice when they just add them on free, especially a game that you like wanted to check out anyways. So that was like my first FIFA game on the next gen consoles. God, they look so good. Every like new sports game that I play on like the next console, it blows me away. Like just the leaps and bounds that they make, and when PlayStation 6 eventually comes out, it's gonna be again just another mind blowing event there. Just in talking about awesome graphics and stuff. I saw a video today like showcasing Unreal Engine 5. I am so excited for like that just become like a
Yeah.
more like common
It
thing.
looks every video I see is like holy shit. And this is and
Yeah.
even just like random indie developers who are like
Mhm.
solo developers who can do like just insane shit with this engine and like the resources that people are making for it. It's pretty crazy.
Like the video, I'm like, this isn't a real video. Like this is a real life video. Like it does, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like it just went from like day to night because they're showcasing like the lighting at nighttime. It's like this is absolutely absurd.
I've seen some videos for like water effects, and it's like, oh
Oh
my
yeah.
god, I cannot wait to see what people do with like these really sweet water effects, rather than it just being like some flat texture. It's gonna be cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then what else was it? Oh, I haven't played this game, but I installed it and I definitely want to try it. I think it's called Tribes of Midgard. That's the other PlayStation
Right.
Plus free game. You haven't played it, have you?
I haven't. It has
No.
multiplayer. I'd be down to
Yeah.
jump in there.
I like when it was coming out, it was one of those games that it just, oh, this looks really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to try it out, and then life happens. It's just months go by, and then now it's a free game on PlayStation. So I'm definitely gonna be trying that one.
Nice.
I'll next time I'm on here, I'll definitely mention or bring it up if I remember. And who knows, maybe we'll play together. That'll be lots of fun.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
then just chilling, playing some League of Legends here and there with some friends. So the
Got it,
game that I'll
yeah.
never get rid of. That's my
Man, I
that's been my
played
track.
Rocket League for the first time in a few
Oh,
months
yeah?
on the weekend. Just always so good. I love
Dude,
that
it's
game.
so good. Yeah. We got to jump in. We haven't played
Yeah,
in a while there.
next time me and Sarah, we usually play like late at night on the weekend. So if I see you
Oh.
on Discord, I'll hit you up. And see if
Message
you wanna
me.
join
Absolutely.
in there for some
That'd be lots of fun.
Yeah.
No, yeah, that's a game where it's I feel like once you've gotten to a certain point in that game, it's like riding a bike where like you always
Yeah.
just you can like have a decent skill level to just kind of compete. Maybe you're not like Clinton, like flying from the
No,
ceilings,
yeah.
doing some crazy flips and air dribbling and all that stuff. Maybe I won't ever get there, but at least like, I can pick up the
man
joystick
can
and have
dream,
some
yeah.
fun.
So yeah, the main game I wanted to talk about today is Dune Spice Wars, which
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember where that was announced. Like, was that Summer Game Fest last
I think it was
year?
Video Game Awards, actually.
Video Game Awards. Yeah, I felt like it was a Jeff Keighley thing.
Yeah.
And that timing makes sense because I feel like I was hyped for it because I had seen the movie. So yeah, it must have been after the movie. Yeah, so Game Awards makes sense. I think you're right. And yeah, so this is a early access on Steam, which I never pick up anything early access. Like, even games that I'm hyped for, I still wait until that full launch. So I don't even know why Dune Spice Wars was the exception to my rule there, but I broke. I just love that Dune world. I still like think about that movie and like the world so much, I think. So I was excited. I just wanted to pick it up anyway. And I think it's the kind of game that, since it is kind of a RTS 4X strategy sort of game, it's one that you just kind of hop in every few months and play a game over the course of a weekend or something like that. It's not one that I'm gonna be playing every day. So I think it'll be fun to like play a little bit now, come back in a few months, I'll have some more updates, and then whenever that 1.0 release, like I can jump in again and see what the differences are. So I think it'll work well for that. So yeah, I guess I'll just break it down a little bit. Right now, I don't know if they're going to add more than this, but there's 4 playable factions in the game. There's the Freemen, of course, the Harkonnen, House Atreides, and then there's the Smugglers, which I don't remember if the Smugglers were like this faction in the movies, or if they're like, or in the books and all that too, or if it's like, man, we need kind of more than 3 factions, so let's add like the Smugglers. But maybe the Smugglers become a bigger part of the story. I don't know.
The names sound fairly generic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people smuggle a lot from the planet of Dune, but I haven't played that faction
okay.
yet, so I'm not exactly sure. But yeah, I've only played as one of the factions so far. I've played as the Freemen. That was the first one I went to. It just felt right, the natural people of the land, and yeah. So I guess other things, like, first I'm gonna say, like, the visuals are great. Like, the game looks really awesome, and yes, it is just a lot of sand, but even with it in that, like, they really vary at the locations. There's some locations that feel a bit more like wintry, and like just different landmarks and things like that, different sand colors. Like, it really feels like they did as much as they could in terms of getting like different kinds of landscapes within what is ultimately just a very sandy planet. And yeah, like, I guess the basic gameplay is you start out with not very much. Like, you just have your in your siege, which is just like, just some rocky outcropping of some sort. And I think you start with like 1 warrior unit. and you just kind of go from there. You're kind of capturing different areas, gaining control of the map, which gives you, obviously vision of things in real time, but then also you can, harvest different resources from those locations, and you can build up your army, send out your scout drones, and build up your cities and get different upgrades and stuff. And yeah, I got to say, like the minute to minute gameplay and like the overarching gameplay is really fun. And I just found myself like I booted it up and I was just hooked for like a whole evening, just played for like 3 or 4 hours or something. Like just couldn't get enough of this. Like this, it's not turn based, but it's that same mentality of like, oh, one more turn. I got to do one more turn, one more thing. Gonna grab this one more city, or I got to just get through this one event before I move on.
So yeah, I wanted to ask a couple questions regarding.
Yeah, a
like,
lot of questions. Please throw all your questions my way. I'd love to.
This was a game that I was very much interested in. Just the idea that it's a strategy game, Dune. Again, I was riding the hype of that movie. It's like, oh my gosh, this is super exciting.
Yeah.
And when it was initially showed off, like there was absolutely no gameplay. It was just like the hand coming out, like the logo, which it looks really cool design. And
yeah, the menu looks really cool. I mean, I don't normally shout that out, but it does look nice. Yeah.
I always shout out a good menu. Sometimes they go like, overlooked, you got to shout out the quality that they put into it. But yeah, so I was just kind of like, is it really going to release early access? Like no gameplay here. This is kind of bizarre. And again, I've definitely, like what you were saying about early access games, I'm just a little bit more hesitant on them. It's like, well, we'll just hold on to it. And for whatever reason, it came out. I never got. Maybe it was the price point. Actually, I think I was expecting it to be a little bit cheaper than it was, and it's cheaper than a full price game.
Oh yeah, I don't even know. I think I paid like $30 or something like that. Yeah,
I think it's like 36 right now on Steam. Which again, it's not breaking the bank, but still is like
for
got
early
other things on the go
yeah.
right now. But yeah, haven't tried it out. But I think just the idea of it is really really exciting. I love RTS games and just strategy games in general. It's last 2 episodes, it's basically all I've been talking about, the games that I've been playing. And yeah, I grew up playing, I think Age of Empires was my first ever game. So that one is more of like same thing with Warcraft 3 and StarCraft, where it's a lot more fast paced. Is this game like that, or is it a lot slower? Like you mentioned, like if you're starting a game, like it can take a little while. I feel like usually when I play a game like StarCraft or Warcraft, like it's a one session like game typically.
Yeah, this is definitely, and maybe there's more you can do in the settings, or maybe that's something that they plan on expanding when it's like a full release, where I know in Civ it's like you can choose a quick game and like that could be like a one session thing. So I think I pretty much just rocked like all the default settings for the one game I've played, which is it's taken me like I think 6 hours, 7 hours, and I obviously still playing through it. Maybe 5 or 6, somewhere in there, and it's hard to say like how much longer it will go, because you can win, there's different victory conditions obviously, so you could, if you just kill everyone and you're the only person on the planet, then you win, or that you can win through politics, or I forget, like I think there's a third way, and I don't know what it would be, if it's like some sort of cultural thing or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So yeah, I think game length, it's hard to say, but in terms of like the actual minute to minute gameplay, I gotta say it's weird, because your units move like very slow, and I know there's like transport units that I don't know how you'd buy them. I don't know where you buy them. I don't know if you need a certain unit or if you have to upgrade it to unlock it or something, but I haven't found that. So that makes my units like, instead they're just like trudging through the sand. So they move pretty slow, but then I'm finding I have to pause often because I like, okay, I got to buy this thing with a certain timing. I want to do this thing in the correct timing. And I'm finding I need to pause a lot in order to be able to do all that. And so obviously I'm still learning the mechanics of the game, so that's part of it. But it's weird, because sometimes, it does feel very fast paced, and I'm struggling to keep up with like all the things I should be doing in all my different little towns. But then sometimes it feels like, oh my God, it takes 7 years for my one guy to cross from one side of my territory to the other. Right. So yeah, I don't know. It's somewhere in between, and I think I just got to figure out more of the mechanics and maybe learn how to speed it up in that way.
Yeah.
But I definitely, so far, I would compare it a lot to just a lot of board games I've played, like resource gathering board games, in the sense that there is a lot of different numbers that you're trying to keep, the right number. So one thing is like when you can finally collect some spice, certain territories will have spice, and so you can collect that spice. And you have this, like, I've never really seen this in a game like this, where essentially you have like a slider, and you can choose how much of that spice you want to just mine to like add up your bank of spice, or you can like bring that number way down. You're not banking much, but then you can just turn it into pure profit. And so
Right.
that's really fun to constantly manage that. And I find like, okay, one of my towns got taken over. Now my gold per turn, and I'm saying turn here, but you know what I mean, like gold per minute,
Yeah.
I guess, is really low. Okay, well now I can jack that slider down, and I'm not going to be saving as much spice. But then when I'm back in a better financial spot, I can bring that back up so I can start saving spice again. So because you need to like
That's
pay
cool.
fines and things like that. Then there's like, manpower you got to balance. So you only have a certain amount of people in your kingdom. So you got to make sure you have enough manpower to do things. Other like just raw materials. Water's another obviously really important one in Dune. You got to make sure you have enough water for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. And so you can do that by planting like windmills, or I think it's like a windmill equivalent. And like different towns get like different amounts of wind depending on if they're on a
Wow.
mountain or not. So you kind of
Hmm.
have to like strategize. Okay, where do I want to put this thing? And you're not building too much in each town. Like you can get a lot of things in there, but it costs a lot of resources. But so far, I usually have like 2 to 3 upgrades in a town and maybe a couple units that are defending it. So, but you really are getting a lot of towns. Like I think in the game I'm at right now, I have like 10 to 12 little towns that I've kind of captured, or little out. I forget what the word is, like camps or outposts or something
Well,
like that. And then obviously
uh,
your main one big base.
right. I was gonna ask in regards to just the bases and stuff, because something in what would I compare it to? I guess StarCraft is like that, where like you could only build a base in a specific area that
Yeah,
has
right.
like. Is that the same thing with this, where
I
like,
think you
or is
have
there
to
like
would take
outposts that you
over. I
capture?
think you'd have to
Okay.
take over another siege in order to get one of those main big one of
Yeah.
those main big bases. And so far on the map that I've explored, which I've pretty much explored most of it, and I will say it's a little bit smaller than I was expecting, and maybe you can choose a larger map. But obviously with the unit move speed, like it feels good. But on the map that I'm playing on, it's me, it's the Harkonnen, and House Atreides. I think there's only three. Like I don't think the smugglers are playing in this map. I don't know if it's a maximum of three or if I just didn't select that. But anyway, all of us have our siege, obviously. And then there's one that's just like rogue, like it's just controlled by no one, just like the NPCs. They're all NPCs, but it's just controlled by no one. And so that's what I was kind of gearing up to do most recently in the game is I was trying to build up some camps around that siege so I could take it over, but it has like a huge defense value, so I'm trying to like get my army big enough. But then the Harkonnens are fucking knocking at my back door trying to fight me too, so I'm trying to balance my units. And that's something too. I feel like the amount of units you can have is pretty small. Like I think I have what is maybe 7 or 8 troops of units, and I'm pretty much like right at the maximum. So I think that number does increase as the game goes on, but like comparing to a StarCraft or something, where I
Right.
guess StarCraft's different because everything is an individual unit, whereas in this game it's like you have a troop of 4 or 5 units, but they're all just like you select them as one thing, as one unit, and move them around.
Okay.
Uh, but yeah, it's I don't know, a lot of balancing things out, balancing out numbers, making sure you're safe on all sides, and
That's
and that part
awesome.
of it I like. I like that minute to minute gameplay, and yeah. What else did I want to shout out? There is, of course, like natural disaster-y things. Like the storms that roll through are like pretty terrifying, and they're fucking huge. It's like the size of my base. And it just like goes through my lands. I'm like having to move all my units so they don't get killed. And that's happened a couple times. I don't know if it's just me or like the other camps, but I feel
Is there
like
a warning when that happens, or it's
they
just like, oh no,
kind
my
of, and
people are
I mean you
out?
can see it. You can see it coming like
Oh,
from
okay.
from a mile away, so you can get ready. And then the other thing that I don't know if I should say I'm disappointed, or I just think I truthfully don't understand it, is the sandworms. None of them have appeared naturally, and as the freeman, I have the what are they called? The bumpers.
Oh,
Or
right.
the thumpers. Thumpers. That's what they're
Yeah.
called. So I can put the thumpers down to like summon them, but I haven't. I don't understand how that works. Like I've tried reading the tooltip every other way, and like I can put them down, but I can't put them too close to enemy units. So I think they're kind of like a landmine where you put them down somewhere, and then if someone walks over it,
Oh,
but I don't know. It hasn't seemed to work. So I haven't actually seen a sandworm in the game. So I don't know how terrifying those are yet. But I'm excited to figure that out. And that's kind of the bonus you get as Freeman is you just have thumpers
that's
that you
cool.
can use. So
Yeah, I
that's
love
kind
that.
of
I
fun.
mean, it separates from like each faction, which again, that was what I was kind of asked. You mentioned
Yeah.
you've only played as the Freeman so
Hmm.
far, but yeah, I was because in a game like this, I feel like you really want to have like a clear difference from the like if the Harkonnens versus House Atreides or something like that, like what really makes them who they are and
I
makes each
really
play through like really unique.
yeah. I really have to report back on that one because to me I there is definitely things that I can see as differences, but they do feel a little bit samey. And obviously, I've only played as one, but even just like the units that are walking around, you have like those funny helicopters from the movie that you use as your scout units,
Oh
and
yeah.
like all of the factions use that same one. It's like color coded to their color,
Oh,
but
okay.
and like the units, I don't know, they're small enough on the screen that they kind of all do look the same, and I think they are in terms of like what the unit is. Uh, and then they just have like their different color scheme. So I don't know. It seems like there, in terms of some of the stuff, there is like a lack of variety. And also, I just felt like it was weird that the Harkonnens, like they have a siege as well. Like I would have thought like maybe they'd set up some base, or they'd have like that whatever that city is on Dune or Arrakis. Is that I forget what all the names of things are from the movie at this point, but. It seems a bit weird to me that the Harkonnen like control a siege as like their main base. You know, I would thinking of like StarCraft, how the Zergs just have like this creepy, like, you know, bulbous base that's just made of
Yeah.
organic matter, and then the Protoss have like their weird alien, but you know they have like very different things depending on what faction they are. So I don't know if I should expect that or if that's something that's going to come in the pipeline. But then you know the other difference is in terms of like what abilities you have, and there's kind of a skill tree in the game, so you can spec into different things. And I've done a lot of military, which is kind of more the Harkonnen thing, but I've specced a lot in there, so I have some good military strength. But one thing
Nice.
the Freemen lack is like political, like that's like their nerf, I guess, as a faction, is
Mm.
their like political power is just really weak. And so there's certain votes that'll come up, and you can like, let's say you could vote for standing tax. So like however many units you have, like it just costs more money to have just standing units. And like as a Freeman, I have not been able to vote on anything yet. Like all this stuff that happens in the world, I get 0 votes, and I'm sure there's a way for me to earn some, but I don't know how to do it. So and I think that's where the House of Treaties are, you know, specced out, is in like the politics, and the
Right.
Harkonnens have more combat stuff, and I guess the smugglers are just better with resources. So yeah, there's definitely your pros and cons, and I don't know if it seems drastic because I feel like those votes haven't seemed like anything too huge that has like made me just super
Yeah.
nerfed, and I get maybe benefits from having the Freeman. So I don't know. I gotta once again play with that some more to see how I feel with it at the end of the day.
So those votes, they go across like all factions.
I
Is
think
that what you're
so.
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you get like more votes in the house. You could
Hmm.
say depending on how many you're based on your political points, but then you know there's so many little like icons that have like values that you increase in different ways, and I only
Yeah.
understand some of them at this point, so hard to say.
And then, sorry if you already said this, but when you choose a map, is like, okay, this one's for 4 players, or this one's 6 players, or something like that. Can you have
Yeah,
duplicates, like 2 factions of Freeman units? You know, if you're co-op or
mm,
something like that. Is that in the game at all,
I
or
don't.
is it only 1 per game mode?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I
Hmm.
just rocked, like I said, the default settings, and there's
Right.
3 of the 4 factions. I'm sure you could get up to 4, maybe do different maps, maybe more customizable stuff. But I could also see that stuff being further down the road. Like I could see them trying to just focus on the balance for now and getting those core features in the game, and then worry about those more options later down the line. You know, before the game releases 1.0, but probably that stuff they'll worry about later on. And that's the other thing too, is like I really don't know how this game is in co-op. I have no idea how the online works, if it's good. I don't know if you can work as a team or if you're always against each other like Civ. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't really report on that stuff yet. I haven't jumped into the online at all.
I think that would be a big selling point for me, honestly, is if it
Yeah.
had like good multiplayer or co-op, just doing through
Yeah,
campaigns
co-op
with a
and like
friend.
if you could make shorter games, I think that would be really good. And like that stuff should be I don't know. I don't think you can make one of these kinds of games without options like that. It seems
Yeah.
like you're kind of just setting yourself up for failure because not everyone has 10 hours to, you know, put this
No,
campaign together.
absolutely not.
And if you do, it's like it's going to take you 3 months, and you're not going to have as much you're not going to be as invested as like just a short and sweet game necessarily. So hopefully
Oh,
that stuff
absolutely.
is in the works.
And then I was just looking at screenshots. It looks like it has like day and night cycles too. That's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah,
Or
I
is
guess
it like certain maps maybe?
I guess there is. I can't say it's really haven't really noticed it in terms of affecting. Like there is, I guess. Okay, but maybe that's worth mentioning is that certain things will happen. Like maybe you'll get a quest that lasts for 15 days, so you have
Mm.
that amount of time to finish that quest. And then, like I said, the kind of the spice tax. So like I think it's every like 30 days, everyone has to pay a spice tax. So you have to make sure that between those 30 days and the next one, you're reserving enough in your banks that you're able to pay off that bounty, essentially. So there that part comes into it, but in terms of like different things that happen at day or night, I don't think that's really the case. But of
Okay.
course, visually, it at least changes it up, which is good because the map itself is generally a lot of sand. But once again, I think they do a good job of like mixing it up, considering that it really is just a sandy planet.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, like the look and the visuals look really
Hmm.
cool, at least first look for
Yep.
me, of just like the details, everything you were mentioning. Like, okay, how do we make sand look different from this sand over here? That's probably not the easiest thing. Another
Hmm.
question I had was in regards to like special units. I imagine each faction has different units that make them feel specific
Hmm.
to that faction. Is there like agents like in I guess Civ that would be a good example where they have like agents you can go like have politics with people, you can have spies that do like hidden things. Like
Yeah,
is there
there
is there
is.
units like that?
There is. Yeah, you have. I don't even know what it's called, but yeah, you're like political chart, and every once in a while you'll get a new, advisor, and then you can choose where you put them. And there's actually like 10 different options or something. Like you can
Oh,
choose to be a spy in any of the other factions. You could put them into like, let's say you're really low on, I don't know, metal, like this one material. You could put them in there and specialize them in that thing, so they'll go in there. Different things like that. So you can really put those advisors around. And then yeah, special units like I don't know if this is a Freeman specific thing, but a couple of my units, if they're not near an enemy unit, they go invisible
oh,
just by default. So that's pretty cool. And I feel like that might be a Freeman specific thing. But
they're in
yeah,
the
other ones,
sand. I can imagine that.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and then different units have like different strengths and whatnot, and probably have different abilities, or maybe some are better at sieging cities, whereas others are just better at fighting units. I guess I will say that in terms of like the battles, they're not they're not amazing so far, and that part of that could be my strategy. But I think it's really just the size. Like the armies are quite small. It's usually just like two packs of enemies fighting each other, and
Okay.
you just kind of click on one until he dies, and then they auto attack the next one. Like I don't know, it's not riveting by any means, but
Yeah.
maybe as you get further into the games, it will be. I think maybe it's more about trying to balance it out so that you're covered on all sides and you're making sure you're covering all your different cities at once. But yeah, I gotta do some more combat, but it hasn't been too riveting so far. And I guess your cities, each of your little camps, you can set up a turret, or you can like
Mhm.
get militia that live in the town, so you can't move them around the map. But when someone comes to fight your town, then you'll have kind of
Right.
people on hand ready to fight.
So yeah, like you mentioned, like the battles are pretty low, like small scale. But do you find like you're fighting quite a bit, or is it mostly just gathering resources and kind of making sure that you're scouting out like ready for an attack, or
Hmm.
like because like I feel like if I'm playing StarCraft or something like Warcraft 3, if you don't have like units like being made for combat in like 2 minutes, you're
Hmm.
just you're fucked. There's gonna be like a little army going right at your base. Like, do you have some wiggle room there for like, okay, I know I'm not gonna get attacked at least for
Yeah.
this amount of time,
Well, yeah,
or
I'm pretty much always mounting up for the next attack, and that's because
okay.
there is a lot of these camps around that you're trying to take over, because these
Mm,
camps like have a certain amount of space of the map that's allocated to them, and it's
okay.
not necessarily just like a circle or a square or something. It's just like kind of random amount of space and
Right.
different resources. So it's like I'm trying to scout out and find the ones that within their territory have spice, and so those maybe be high priority of like I want to send my armies over there. So I'm pretty much always fighting those. And a cool thing too is you can take over a camp, and you can obviously choose to make it part of your kingdom, whatever it's called, and then that's a city you have to control. But if you do that, you'll have a cost associated with owning that city, like water. It's going to cost manpower, but you can also just raid the city and take a bunch of resources from it, and then like every 30 days later, you can come back and do that again. Like eventually, it'll repopulate, and so you can keep doing that. So there's a couple camps that I have that are kind of stuck on the outside of the map, and I have territory all around it, so none of the other like Harkonnens have access
Mm,
to them, and so I can just keep going back and abuse these poor camps and just get resources out of them, and there's no negative repercussion as far as I can tell for being this kind
right.
of warmonger of taking all these camps and getting resources.
Except morally.
Yeah, and then but like if I take them over, they don't really get me any new land, and they don't really have any
Right.
resources, so I don't really want them in part of my kingdom. And they're not really gonna fight me necessarily. They don't leave their camp to come fight you. And then there is like random raiders that do go around.
Right.
But yeah, and then I haven't fought the House Atreides at all, but the Harkonnens have just started fighting me a little bit. It's been pretty simple so far because it's kind of just on one front. They're just kind of attacking one of my towns, and I was able to set up a turret and whatnot. So I was able to fight them off. But it seems like they're not going to lay off now. It seems like they're just going to keep fighting me, and it's it's because they wanted some certain vote to pass or whatnot, and I didn't vote for it. But it's like I also can't vote for it. They're mad at me, which makes sense. The Harkonnen don't seem like very reasonable people.
No, they're looking for any
yeah.
excuse.
So yeah, I think it seems like there is going to be a lot of combat, kind of always going on. That's going to be your active thing while you're just letting resources accumulate to buy things. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you kind of mentioned it, but it sounds like there's some sort of diplomacy where you're not like immediately at war with everyone. It kind of, you can maybe do certain votes to get people kind of liking you and then ally with them. Is that how it works? Or you're just, everybody is kind of in this zone and then you can only kind of become enemies? Or how does that work?
Yeah, it seems pretty fluid, and I probably just don't truthfully understand it yet. But like the Harkonnens, it's not like Civ. Like it's not like they declared war on me and then started fighting me. Like they just came over and started fighting me, and I just had to react in real time. And then I did try and talk to House Atreides and get them to ally up with me and help me out. But I wasn't able to find out how to do that in the dialogue menu with them. So I don't know. Like maybe that's an online thing where you would be doing those kind of connections, but hopefully you can make different partnerships with the NPCs. So I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I haven't been able to figure that part of the game out yet.
Yeah, because it's interesting because I feel like what's a good example? I mean, Total War Warhammer, that's a good example. I have a lot of gameplay in that one. But so there's different like races from the different factions. So I could be a different faction from you, but maybe we're the same race. So like technically we can become really good allies to the point that like one of us could confederate the other, and then I just like have you like basically raise my flag.
Yeah, interesting.
And then but like I can't do that if you're a different race from me. Like if you're a lizardman or something and I'm an elf.
Right.
Like,
I don't think that level of depth is
Yeah.
going to be here. And like I said, like I don't know. I don't know all the lore, and pretty much all the lore I know is like from the movie. So I feel like all the factions I would know of are already kind of represented. So I don't know if they plan on adding more or if they plan on differentiating them. Because it's kind of weird, right? Because I am the Freeman and I have my siege and I have my kingdom, and I said there's other siege on the planet. So presumably those are Freemen as well. But
different factions possibly, like
but yeah, like
DLCs,
they're
who
not
knows?
they're not one of the factions in terms of like having a person you can talk to, and they're not actively doing
Right,
things.
just
It's
like a
just like
minor
sits there.
faction.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that'll be something that's really just interesting to see for when the game hits like 1.0 when it actually fully releases, and again just DLCs that follow, because again I'm so limited in my Dune knowledge. I've only seen the one movie, but
Exactly.
it seems pretty deep, and like I know for a fact just from watching that movie there is like other political factions out there, right? So there's no reason why they wouldn't be able to put them in there.
Yeah, I'm curious if like other planets or different aesthetics of maps is something they plan in the future, even if it doesn't make sense. But even just like here's this other Harkonnen planet, now you
here's another
plan on that
smuggler.
one. Yeah, they because then it's like, well, what do the Freemen do? Like, why are the Freemen on this planet? That part doesn't make sense, but they could figure that out if they. I guess if they add more factions, they could make that make sense by filling that stuff in. So yeah, I'll report back on this game in the future. Any other questions from you on the game?
I don't think so. I think my last comment I was gonna make there is just I really hope they add a lot more factions, because that's one of my favorite things about playing games like that. Like whether it's Civ or again Warhammer, another great one to pull from Total War, because there's just so many different factions that play so differently, and like the replayability is just endless, because it's like, okay, I've never played as this person, or maybe I've played as this person but I haven't allied with this person. So just like the replayability there. Because this game looks really cool. I definitely will try it out eventually. I really, the gameplay is a lot different than what I was expecting. Again, I think I just am limited in like my 4X strategies that I've played. So because this is like totally a hybrid between an RTS and just a more slow paced like resource gathering, like what you're saying. Like it reminds me of something like Catan or something like that, right?
Definitely.
So, very very interesting. Yeah, no, that's really cool.
I guess I can't say that I recommend to go out and buy it today. I'm having fun with it, but I don't think it's a must play right now. And hopefully, I would love to say that it is when it hits 1.0 and there's more stuff in there. But in terms of early access, like I didn't encounter any bugs or anything. Like it's a very playable game. So if you want to get back in the Dune world and you don't really care too much about, I don't know, like maybe some of the deeper mechanics, but you just want to be in that world and mess around and learn some more about the lore, like I think this is a pretty good game to pick up. But I think you might as well wait. One thing to keep in mind is often when games leave early access to their full release, they increase the price by
Right.
not necessarily a set amount, but they'll increase the price. So now it might be cheaper than when it hits full release at some point in the future. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, there you go. Dune
I
Spice
guess I
Wars.
just thought of a question and tying
Sure.
into what I was saying earlier about my historical games and how just like a lot of info tabs. And again, because I'm so limited in like Dune, if in Dune knowledge, if you highlight a certain Freeman character, would it say like this person's specialty and like blah blah? Like, is there a little detail about the character, or is it just like their set name and this is warrior with axe?
Well, actually, that's an interesting thing because when you pick your, I kind of forgot about this because it was at the very start of the game when I first picked it up. But when you pick Freeman, like there was sub people that you can pick as your, and these are different than the advisors I was talking about. But you can pick like whatever Zendaya's character is. I forget Zendaya's character, whatever her character name is. Like you can pick her as one of your people in there, and then I can't remember their names. But anyway, you can pick these people and that'll change like how you, I guess how you're specialized slightly. And so I guess you would probably gain that information from the Harkonnens or from House Atreides as well.
Right.
And yeah, I think overall, like I don't really understand the political aspect of the game. Like that's something that's really going over my head, and I think it's mostly because I'm Freeman and I'm not engaging with it. But in terms of the other systems, like even without tons and tons of tutorials, I feel like I'm able to understand it. And maybe that's because it doesn't have as much depth as, well, it certainly doesn't as Warhammer or maybe as Civ at this point in the game. Maybe it will down the road. But in terms of what's in here now, like for the most part, I'm able to pretty well understand the mechanics of the game and what the resources do. How do I get more of them? That kind of thing. So
Right. Cool.
And I'm sure that'll get better in terms of like, having like these, whatever they call it, the glossaries or the index, whatever it is to learn that stuff. When Civ, it's like, what does this thing mean? You just search it in a tab and it pops up with all these different pages that you can look through. So
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing your thoughts.
definitely. Let's take our last ad break and we'll come back and talk about Trek to Yomi. Okay, we are back. Trek to Yomi is the hottest new indie game on the scene. This is a kind of very authentic black and white samurai action adventure game from developer Flying Wild Hog / Leonard Manciari, published by Devolver Digital. So Devolver popping off, just publishing all sorts of great games over the years. And here's another from them. So this game just came out a few days ago. It is on Game Pass. That's where I'm playing over on Xbox. I'm guessing you're on PC.
Yeah, I got it on Steam.
Nice.
It
It's on
nice,
Steam as well.
Price.
And then,
it was actually, they had like a Devolver Digital like weekend or something, so it was like on sale before it was even out. It's like, oh, great time to pick it up.
Definitely go pick up. I mean, Devolver Digital. Go pick up Inscription. Go pick up Disc Room. They have so many great games.
I still haven't gotten that one actually. I hope
get
the
it.
sale's
I don't know how
still
much.
on.
I think it's on sale. I have the tab open right now.
It's like $15 or something.
It is 30% off. Buy Inscription. Weird West as well is on sale. Oh my God, you got Loop Hero on sale. You got Phantom Abyss. Go pick up some Devolver Digital
really
games.
good indie games.
They make some great stuff. So anyway, this Trek to Yomi, just like I said, just came out. It is a action adventure game, mixture of 2D and kind of not third person, but just set camera where you can kind of more freely roam around these areas. Definitely a focus on the combat, but I think it is a very cinematic game as well in terms of it's got these very specific camera angles. It sticks to the black and white.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't have English in any way. Like it is full on subtitles with Japanese voices. It even has like the film grain effect over it. Like it definitely has that aesthetic to it. So Kirklin, you're a big fan of this genre, this setting. How far into the game are you? Either chapter or hours roughly, and what do you think so far?
Yeah, so I've played about 3 hours. I think like just under 3 hours. I think I'm like very close to the end of chapter 4.
Okay.
That's when things kind of change. I don't quickly.
Sure.
Whereabouts you? I don't want to spoil anything, obviously, but
I think I'm at the start of chapter 4.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a little bit, I guess, a little bit behind you. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't get to the end of that one, but that's the chapter where things kind of get different from like the game so far. But Yeah, no, I was very surprised about this game. I'm so glad I have you because I feel like I never would have heard about this game if you didn't like throw it on my radar. And then like as soon as I looked it up, I'm like, this is my type of game. This looks so
Yeah.
awesome. Just like the side scrolling during combat mixed with like kind of the free roam of when you're not in combat, you can kind of explore like a little bit. You know, it's a very linear game, but still,
Hmm.
instead of just being forced to go to the next area, like there is some exploration aspect, which kind of surprised me. And what you mentioned about like the cinematic experience, I think that's what really threw me off, like where I wasn't expecting it, and in all the right ways. The story is like really gripping, really emotional. Very much feels like something like Ghost of Tsushima. I know
Hmm.
you have experience with that, but any
Yep.
audio listener, like if you like Ghost of Tsushima, I really think you'll like the story of this. It's similar, just getting back at bad guys in feudal Japan. So I love it. I love like the Kurosawa. I hope I'm saying that right. Like the grainy
Hmm.
film effect that you were saying with the black and white and the authentic Japanese. The voice actors do such a good job. The unique camera angles when you'd come into like a certain zone and it would be like like a very unique like kind of aerial shot, and then it
Yeah.
just kind of stays there, but it just has this really artsy feel to it. It's
I'd
it's hard
compare
to
it
for
to
me to
like the
put.
old Resident Evil games in terms of like
Yeah,
how the camera is for people. Yeah.
absolutely, but like not as janky as like those old PS1 games, I'd say,
Sure.
because I remember
Well,
there's
those
certain
games, I mean,
areas.
you're aiming a gun and shooting. It's like
Yeah,
that doesn't work as well as a
no,
game
you have
where
to
you're
like
just
face a certain
exploring in
way.
that
Yeah,
environment and then just combat switches it back to 2D. Yeah.
yeah, and it's very like seamless. I haven't ran into any bugs in that regard.
I
The
want to ask you
combat.
about the frame rate because
Okay,
I'm playing on Series X, and this is the thing too, where like this game is very authentic, and I don't know if that's part of it, where the game is at an intentionally lower frame rate to match up with what these old school samurai films were. But to
right.
me, it feels like it's running at it's definitely 30 at most, or like it seems like it's even dropping down to 20. And it's not like
Hmm.
a lot is happening on screen and the frame rate is chugging. It's just like it's like consistently like a low frame rate to the point where, and I don't know, I feel like I've really simmered off in terms of being a frame rate snob, whereas I used to be very snobby about it. But I'm just noticing it, and I think it's maybe making the combat a bit less gripping for me is having a
Oh,
lower
okay.
frame rate. But are you noticing that too? It could be a Series X thing because sometimes Series X optimization is really bad. I've noticed that in a lot of games over the
I
years.
actually haven't like run into that like noticeably
Okay.
wise. I'm definitely not a rate snob. I grew up on budget builds for PCs and stuff, so I usually like can just look past that sort of things.
Sure,
But
sure.
there was one moment where I was chugging along, but I realized like a download had like started on my Steam,
There you
which is
go.
weird
Yeah.
because it's not even like an online game, but it's still just like completely like chugged out my game where like, and this game like it relies on like parries and like good timing in the combat, so that's where it's like okay, this is unplayable. So I can only
Mm-hmm.
imagine if the frame rate's really bad, yeah, it'd be unplayable. You think you're timing it right for an attack, and the next thing you know, you're dead. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't run into like any. It's not. I think you. I don't think it's like a 60 frame like per second game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not noticeable enough for me to take note of it. So that's good. But yeah, the combat is one thing where I feel like initially I was having a lot of struggles with it. Just getting into it. Maybe I could compare it to like early Dark Souls where like you're just dying to, like the easiest mobs and all of a sudden it's like okay, I can actually just power through this area
Mm-hmm.
because I just understand the gameplay, and that was the same thing for me where I felt it has like a little bit of a prologue sequence where you I don't think this is a spoiler, but the beginning, like you're playing as the child, and I was dying so
Right.
many times as him. I'm
Yeah,
like, this
I did
game is
too.
so
Yeah.
hard. I'm not gonna make it through
The
here.
one
And
time
then
when you gotta fight like four guys at the
yeah,
same time, it's like shit, man. I'm here like 5 times, 6 times.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
And I remember like when I don't I think Xbox has achievements, but on Steam like the first achievement it's like your first kill, and it's like 99% of people have this or whatever. And I was like a decent amount of time into the game and I got that. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is going to be rough. It's going to be like Sifu again." Never going to be able to beat this game, but yeah, certain moment it just clicked and I was getting really just confident and happy, and like it very satisfying with the combat. I feel like it kind of rewards you to just pull off certain
Mm-hmm.
combos and stuff like that.
There's a
I
lot of
feel like the
combos in
game,
there. Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like the game introduces it to you in a reasonable manner. Like as you progress through the game, like you'll just unlock certain combos. There's a little, I don't even think you would call it a skill tree because you don't like you don't level it up like yourself. It just kind of unlocks through certain areas of the game, and then like there's certain pickups that maybe it'll increase your health or your stamina meter. And again, like that's not a deep like addition to the game, but I still really like it. I think it, like, instead of just getting overwhelmed with like, okay, here's all the combos for the rest of the game, like I'll reach a certain point and then something will pop on my screen like explaining this combo. It's like, oh, okay, I think I can, it's easy enough for me to just incorporate that with my normal game play style. And yeah, like it's fun unlocking the new things and just tackling the different combat sequences differently with the new addition of the combos that I got. And man, I'm loving this game. I am having so much fun with it. Again, like the cinematic experience is totally what like surprised me. I'm like, oh my god, this is like a really emotional, gripping story. There's I think it was chapter 3, which you said you're on chapter 4. So yeah, we're both past that point. But I was worried for certain characters. I'm like, oh my god, I met this character for like 10 minutes and I'm already still so worried about them and just what their fate was. And yeah, I think it's a hidden gem, honestly. It's one of those games where I don't think many people in the mainstream will have heard about, but I'll definitely be banging that drum and just telling people to get this, especially with the Devolver Digital sale on right now.
Yeah, hopefully Game Pass can raise it up too and get more eyes on it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. But yeah, it's very, very fun. And again, like there's certain combat sequences where maybe I'm down at like my last health bar and I'm like, oh no, there's like 3 guys right here. And then I end up like just getting perfect parries. There is certain combos that I'm kind of just like leaning on because they're just, I personally feel like they're pretty strong. Like there's a specific stun that I can pull off and then you just go for the finisher. And I feel like now I have that timing down for that combo like really easily where I can just like chain it.
Dude, I find the turnaround attack, like if you're back, because it's 2D, but like sometimes people be behind you or in front of you and you can kind of flip around or spin around with like an attack. I find that attack just goes through all blocks. Like it almost always hits and like you can combo from it. It's pretty strong.
No, it is. Yeah, I'll like purposely have my back turned for
I'll just walk up backwards
and go for the turn attack. Yeah, and that's another thing I forgot to mention that I found was unique. Like, it's like the combat is. I might have mentioned this. I might have not. But like the combat while you're in combat, it's fixed to the point where you can't just explore the world, and then anytime that it's not a combat sequence, like you sheath your weapon, you can't unsheath it, but you can kind of explore and go around 3D, and it's a really nice just combination of gameplay, I guess is the term to go there. I really like it. Again, like the exploration isn't Breath of the Wild level, Witcher level, but like it's something more than what could have been just a 2D game the whole way through, which I still think would have been top notch quality. One of my favorite games ever. I hope I mentioned this on either Out of Mana or to you just in personal. I love the game Inside. It's the same people that did Limbo, I believe. And there's many sequences in this game that reminds me of that, where it's a 2D scroller, but there's still like enough detail in the world to make it feel a lot deeper than just a single 2D plane. And yeah, a lot of moments like that in this game. I'm having so much fun with it. I'm only 3 hours in, but still I'm ready to just keep going.
Yeah, I'm liking it as well. I don't think I'm quite on as hot on it as you are, and I think for me that mostly comes down to the combat. I'm just not a big fan of that as you are, and we'll talk about why that is in a bit. But yeah, I think for me, like, visually is just what I want to praise this game for. I think it's just such a... I don't know how many people are on this indie team. It's the term indie game is so weird now, because that could mean, like, these huge teams of, like, 50 people or something, or it could mean one person making a game. Whatever they have here, like, I'm incredibly impressed at the level of polish, and the animations look great. When sometimes we'll zoom in and you'll see a character's face really close up, and it looks great. It's not it's not like they're trying to hide anything. Like they really have gone above and beyond. And part of that probably is that for the whole art of this game, they can avoid using color in any way, and they can just focus on, like, hey, we're doing this black and white thing. We have these very set camera angles, and they can work around that. And I think probably having that limitation, or like that self-imposed limitation, probably helped them elevate what is right there in front of them, and they could really just make that as good as possible. I was sitting on the couch playing this game, and Mads was watching me, and she was like, "Oh my God, is this a video game or am I watching an Oscar-winning film?" Like, she just said that blankly, and I just love that comment, because like it really does look that good. And for that to say that about an indie game, she didn't say that when I was playing like Forza Horizon or Elden Ring or something. It's just like this small indie game, so I thought that was pretty cool. And like I was just thinking about this one moment when I was playing last night. the camera's like really down low, and you're kind of going in the background climbing up this ladder, and you can see like that kind of rooftop. It's kind of framed nicely in the middle, and you can see the moon just poking out over top. And then on the left side is like where you're going, and there's a couple enemies up there. Like, I love those camera angles, and that's actually something I want to see more of. I feel like games went away from that when it used to be a thing back in the day, when it wasn't either if you had like a GameCube controller and the camera stick is janky, so you're not going to use that actively as a camera, or just it was easier to make games that way or something. But I feel like we've really gone away from that. You always have control of the camera, but I really like not having control of the camera in this game. And instead, they can set up these really cinematic scenarios, and then when you just jump into the 2D camera for the combat, it just like seamlessly works, and these transitions between these different areas is just on the fly and works great. So really want to praise them on that part of it. So
I'm glad you shouted that out specifically for. I mean, I definitely wanted to highlight that, but I totally forgot of just when. And I was gonna compare it also to like Inside, how like you can't really explore, you just go one direction.
Sure.
But like that is what the game developer like made for you to experience. It's like when you're watching a movie, like I can't go explore and change this, but like they set up these shots very specifically for you the viewer, you the consumer, you the player. And yeah, like what you just mentioned, how like the specific angle that just captures the moon so nicely, you know, like if you're just free roam, like you never would have seen that. Maybe you wouldn't have even seen the sky, but like
unless you're like, you know, spending hours in photo mode, like looking for these specific scenarios, which
exactly
I've done
that's
a couple
so rare.
times, but yeah.
So I definitely I like both, obviously. Like if I'm playing The Witcher, I don't want.
I just think this is a great thing for an indie game to do.
Yeah,
I just think it limits. It puts a limitation on yourself that you can work within and really raise the game up in certain ways. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In terms of the audio, I think the music is good, but it's nothing special to me. Like I'm not gonna be, you know, listening to it on Spotify. I think for me, like the sound effects are actually kind of lacking. I just don't think they're the highest of quality. There's certain things with like maybe a character is like in pain on the ground in a village. I'm thinking of an exact situation here is why I bring that up. And he's just like crying out in pain, and it's like he does the exact same two sounds like back to back, and it's like balanced poorly, and like there's like fire in the background, like doesn't sound great either. So I don't know. For me, the sound effects aren't great, but the music's like solid enough.
Yeah, I like like the classic samurai tones if like an enemy approaches, like
sure, yeah.
something like that. Again, it's not game breaking for or like what's the word, like groundbreaking for audio or anything like that. But I think again they put more emphasis in the visuals, which I'm glad they did.
Yeah, and I think that to me that my favorite part of the game, not the story, not the combat, is when you have these slightly more open areas that you're able to explore in. It's fun to just like, if you can kind of get clever, there's maybe like a hidden room off to the side that's not really hidden, but if you just like spend a little bit extra time, you can go in there and find a collectible, or maybe there's like an additional battle in that room. You can maybe find an extra checkpoint or something like that. But I just love walking around these towns and looking around, and I think, you know, I'm still kind of just at the start of chapter 4, so I feel like there's more of the journey I have to go on. But, you know, within the name of the game, Trek to Yomi, I feel like you're going to go on this journey to this particular place, and I think that adds a lot to that exploration of making it feel like a journey that you're actually going through, and you're seeing these rolling hills and stuff. You're not just skipping from level to level. Like, you're kind of, whenever you're going to a place, you're gonna like walk the old-fashioned way and go through those environments. And they do a great job of guiding the player. You know, we think of how these kinds of similar games from AAA studios will guide players by, like, maybe they'll have a light flashing in one particular area towards the doorway to guide you there, or oftentimes, like, you know, these yellow ledges you got to climb. That's how they guide you there. But I think they've done such a good job of, you know exactly where to go at all times, even though it's black and white and the depth perception can be a bit off and it's maybe hard to tell, but somehow I always know exactly where to go, and I always know exactly what is like an extra area I could be exploring versus what is the critical path. So I don't know how they do that, how they did that. Probably just a lot of iteration, but like they've nailed it on that degree of the game.
Oh, I 100% agree. There's been many instances when, yeah, I'm just kind of exploring the scenery. It's like, let's check out this door. I probably can't go in there. It's like, and then he just kicks down the door. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then it goes to an area that maybe has like a environmental thing that I can like pull, and then it'll take out some enemies that I might have been struggling on. And like, the game isn't pointing in that direction, but I was just testing the limits, I guess. And then when it actually was like, oh my god, they actually implemented this, like, it was kind of shocking in that sense. And yeah, I feel like I wouldn't have put that into words of I never get lost. Like I know where to go, but it's not like a shining beacon.
Mm-hmm.
That must be some like psychological thing where like they can implement that into the game of
Well,
just
it's
like,
the
oh,
camera angles too, right? If you can
yeah,
have like the
right.
specific angle, it's like it's pointing to exactly where you need to go. But it's
Yeah.
not always just that simple. Like there's a lot of variety to that, and sometimes there's multiple paths you can go, and somehow and you can still like
Mhm.
pick those out. So yeah, whatever they've done there, it's like it's just kind of magical in a way when you really think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it makes it one step up from just being like
Mm-hmm.
a very linear where you can't go anywhere else. Like I feel like I actually could on a replay like find somewhere that I didn't go before, right? Because like what I was just explaining of like the environmental, what's the word for that? Like the like the game of Gollum when you're gonna be like pulling switches
Yeah,
and killing people with lava. Like what type of environmental just interaction? I guess I don't know.
I
I feel like I
environmental
had a
storytelling,
specific
just
term.
level design. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like though like you don't have to interact with those things, but when you come
Mm-hmm.
across it, it's like, okay, this is and they have this little like white like flicker on like things that you
Sure.
can interact
Yeah, yeah,
with or
for
people that you can
collectibles and
but
things.
and
Yeah.
it's so minimal that like you could miss it, but I feel like it is important to have that in there to just be like, okay, I know I can at least interact with this
Mm-hmm.
person or this switch because there is quite a few people that you walk through and you can interact with
Yeah.
them
Man,
on
how
it,
many
but
times have you seen one of those things and thought it was at the far end of a room, but it's
many
actually like right in
times.
front of the camera?
Many times, and there's also been instances of just like the screen like having that film effect, and I'm like,
Sure.
oh my
So
god,
you
there's something
think you
over
see
here.
like a
There's like a
pop? Yeah.
collectible, and it's nothing. It's just like the film effect. But
That's funny.
I'm
I've
looking for
never
all my
felt like I've gone
collectibles.
off path because of that. It's just yeah, like a funny detail. And yeah, like the
Absolutely.
world, like man, like when you first start this game, as you said, like the kind of prologue, so to speak, you're just like exploring a town, like going through this town, and like I think there's a sense of scale to it that makes it feel realistic. And there's not like tons of people. There's enough NPCs. There's a little like market area. Like I don't know. I just love the details they've put into these towns. And yeah, there's not like tons you can interact with, and most of the times it's just like going to pick up some collectible. But I don't know. I just love exploring these little levels they've built. They're so much fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I love not really spoilers, but just like the transition from that prologue, how like you are in like the heart of like a city that just it's just like flourishing, and then
Hmm.
like oh like everyone's just living about their day as if it's a regular thing, and then as you get like deeper onto the outskirts, like there's actually
Yeah.
like a war going on, and it's just like
Hmm.
so much more like people crying, like people like just dead, like it's just it's a nice little like descent into just like the war torn area, and
Yeah.
I love that. I think it was such a great opening. Again, like the tutorial kind of it just takes you into the game like very cleanly, and I thought
Hmm.
and then just like when they keep throwing like new combos at you, like it's not all at once. Like I think everything's just spread out really well, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's talk.
credits to them.
Let's talk about the combat. So I'm gonna bring out a couple of my grievances, and you can rebuttal. I just
Hopefully.
want to hear what you think. But I think one thing for me, a big part of the combat here, I guess just to break it down very quickly. So once again, like all those combat sequences are on a 2D plane, and you have a basic like upwards attack or downwards attack, and then you can do a heavy attack, and then a combination of those things in different ways allows you to do different combos. There's like a dash attack you can do, and then you'll get projectiles, which we can talk about as well. So it's pretty simple on paper, and I think it's just a combination of maybe different enemy types and like how you're going to combat them, and then just mixing up certain combos, things like that. One thing for me though is like a big part of this is parrying these attacks into something else. And I don't know if you feel this, but I feel like there's this weird thing where sometimes the game will kind of slow mo a bit as someone's coming in for a strike that you can parry, or sometimes it won't do that. But then once you parry, it'll go into a bit of a slow mo reaction time.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like often I'm like missing my parry timing because of that, because I'm parrying for a quick attack, but then actually the game slows down. And it's not like the
Hmm.
opponent is intentionally halting their attack to trip me up. It's just like the game's trying to be cinematic, which it succeeds at mostly. And then I mess up my timing. But then I also find oftentimes when I get a parry and I hit my attack button to do my retaliation attack, it like doesn't register it. And I don't know why. I haven't been able to figure it out. But like in my hour and a half, whatever it is of playtime, I'm just getting my parry and I'm spamming the button or I'm hitting it at different times, and just like sometimes my attack just won't go off, and then they recover, and then I'm like back in this battle again. So
Right.
it sounds like, based on your reactions on your face, it seems like those things aren't happening to you. But I've noticed
Well,
them a lot, and it's making it. And part of that probably is the frame rate. Honestly, that probably throws me off a bit
yeah.
too, where I feel like the game's eating inputs randomly.
Yeah, so um the second thing you said regarding like the parry and then sometimes the attacks wouldn't register. There was again like before I feel like I've really figured out like the combos and everything. There's a lot of times where I thought I was doing a specific combo, but what I was actually doing, I was hitting like the buttons too quickly. I wasn't like strike, strike, then heavy
Hmm.
strike. It was like strike, strike, heavy strike, and then it would just kind of like cancel it. And I was getting so frustrated because again I would
Hmm.
like parry it, and then I would just like kind of glitch out, and then I would just get like murked by the guy that's recovered now, and then he sends me to his other buddies. Then I get two shot. So I I don't really have that anymore because, like I said, like I feel like I've kind of have again like my bread and butter combos that I just kind of rely on
Hmm.
now. I feel like I can get those off every single time, and I don't really have any issues with the parrying. But the slow mo thing, because I know it'll slow mo if you get like a perfect parry, and then if you just regular block, it won't actually slow mo. And
Okay.
I don't know if I've had it where like they go to attack and then it like slow mos. I think it's only when I actually go for a
Mm.
block, but it could have been just muffled, and I think I was, or maybe I thought I was doing something weird to like slow mo the game, but it hasn't really stood out much to me
Okay.
in that regards. I'll definitely be looking out for that going forward because I feel like that would be a gameplay error on their behalf if
Hmm.
someone's just coming in for an attack and it just slows down the game. Because yeah, it's I feel like they have enough emphasis on the gameplay to not have just like a gimmicky thing like that, like hey
Yeah.
player pause or like
Yeah.
block, um, but yeah, like yeah, and I also found for me like anytime again I have my bread and butter combo, so I know exactly what I'm gonna be
Hmm.
doing if someone's coming at me. It has switched up a bit with like different character types. Like you probably have seen like the
There's a bit of
spearman
variety.
units.
Yeah, the spearmins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the spearman, I was getting so fucked up by them like the first time I had one where I just could not get the parry timing down at all. I thought I was gonna have to like take a break from the game because there was one character that was just absolutely messing me up. I felt like I had the right parry time down, but because he attacks so much further away from the swordsman, you kind of have to time it differently, and then he does a different variety of moves, so you'd have to parry at different times. Um, I don't think like the level of like detail in the combat and the parry system is anything like a Sekiro or a game like that
Yeah.
where like it's
I
all
f-
about the parries. But
I almost feel like they're trying to make it seem more complicated than it actually is.
yeah,
That's a vibe I've got, where they like throw all these new combos at you that, but like I don't know, the enemies die so quick that it feels like, I don't know, most of them aren't lasting through an entire combo anyway. Like they'll
no,
die after one or two strikes.
yeah,
So I don't know. I almost feel like they're trying to make it more complicated than it is, and maybe it's because it does get more complicated with different enemy types and stuff.
yeah,
But yeah,
maybe,
I don't know. I guess it feels like they're maybe trying to hide something. And I've also been annoyed by this a little bit, where I feel like enemies they're just backing away all the time, and it makes some of these combat sequences take a long time because like anytime I strike at them, like I almost have to just wait for them to attack, parry, and then fight. Like if I'm on the
mm,
offense, it feels like my options are limited there. And you do have the projectiles, which can open up an enemy a little bit, but that's something that I has kind of annoyed me a bit because it just like feels like
yeah,
it slows the game down, and like I don't always want to just parry and counterattack. Like sometimes I want to
yeah.
go aggressive, and like sometimes it does work too. But then other times I go up and then they just keep backing away to the far end of the
Yeah.
screen, and it's,
I'm
yeah.
not sure if you've unlocked yet, but there is this a combo where you can like sprint strike, which definitely allows you to be a
Right.
lot more aggressive, and there's also a roll strike where
I don't have the
um
roll strike yet. I don't
okay,
think
yeah. So
that sounds
again, that
awesome. Yeah.
allows you to kind of get into combat a lot more easily. Because yeah, initially it's very bare bones. Like if you run at someone, they're just gonna strike you down and just kill
Mm-hmm.
you. So you do have to just kind of wait for the parries. I I do like that you can kind of be creative with your combos, though. I feel like in the boss fights, that's where I was kind of stringing together different combos than just
Mm.
like my bread and butter
Yeah,
ones,
for
where
sure.
I was able to get a lot more DPS down in like my parry windows. So then it was kind of forcing me to play a little bit differently from my game, my regular style that I was kind of leaning in on, which is good. It forces me out of my
Mm-hmm.
comfort zone there. And yeah, like I'm only in, I don't know how many chapters are in the game, but just with where I'm at, there is some characters that I don't think you've faced yet. So
Sure.
there is gonna be hopefully some more, harder type units that you kind of have to play differently, and just
Yeah.
hopefully just keep learning new combos as you play through the game.
Right. I mean, honestly, what I did at a certain point was I think there was like just one particular scenario where it's just a really long sequence before you get a checkpoint, and I was kind of annoyed because I was like clearing out this
Oh yeah.
one area of
I
like
think I know
three
exactly
enemies
what you're talking about.
on like the
'Cause they're-
bridge. It's like a long
yeah,
bridge. Is that yeah?
yeah.
And
And then I
I
was like, I can't believe the checkpoint is that far back because I died like 3 times there. I remember so specifically.
yeah. So I was just a bit annoyed because I was like, okay, I can clear these enemies out on the bridge easily enough, but like redoing it all this time and running across kind of annoying. So I ended up switching the game from normal down to easy, and I'm enjoying it a lot more because of that. Because like I said, I'm not too connected with this combat system. But I'm loving the world. I love the
Mhm.
exploration. I like the story enough. So like that's great. I have no shame in putting it down to easy. I'm not trying to prove anything here. I just want to see this game through, and I think that's going to be the way to do it. Whereas something like Sifu, which you talked about earlier, I
Yeah.
couldn't switch it down to easy, and so I just left the game. I'm like, I don't want to get
Yeah.
good at this. It's not hooking me enough, so I'm out. Whereas Trek to Yomi, cool. I just turn the difficulty down. It makes the game a whole lot easier. There is still a couple like boss fights that take me a few tries, even on easy, but for the most part, I can kind of just breeze through it, and that is working a lot better for me. So don't be afraid to do that. Anyone listening, if you're having trouble and you like the world and the visuals, don't be afraid to do that. What do you think about the projectiles? I feel like they are like I don't know. I love a good bow and arrow in a game. This is not one of them. Like it's pretty
Very
pretty
basic.
lackluster.
Click a button and your attack will go
yeah.
away from you.
Not I don't think the game is trying to amp that up by any means. Like this
No.
is a sword to sword combat game where you can use projectiles to cheese some enemies or maybe get an extra hit in or something like that. So I don't think it's like a problem by any means, but I also don't think it adds really much depth or intrigue to the combat. And if it wasn't in the game, I don't think, other than me mentioning this very quickly, I don't think I would change my views on the game pretty much at all.
No, I agree. I still think it's nice to have it in there because again, if you're getting swarmed by enemies, sometimes it's nice to just get some distance from them. Like they'll
Sure.
stop running at you if they get a kunai to the stomach,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
It
Yeah.
won't kill them, but it'll slow them down. And I've also found I feel like I use projectiles more in those boss fights because I'm able to just chain DPS.
Mhm.
Like if I throw like a kunai out and then just like immediately follow up with a strike, like I'm just doing more DPS than if I only did a strike. So, but yeah, it's one of those things that I'm not praising the game, recommending it for that system. It definitely
Sure.
could have been improved upon, but I don't know. Like if I'm thinking about it, like if I'm holding down my bow and I'm doing more attack, like more damage if I'm holding it down further, and then would you add like an aiming system? I feel like it just
Yeah,
that's the
like it takes away
that's the
from what the
extent you can
core game
go.
experience is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's okay. I think when it was first introduced, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting that they have this in this game. Like, it's not what I was expecting. But when it got to like the furthest extent of it, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand. This is a
Mhm.
swordsman game. So yeah,
Yeah.
not amazing. Room for improvement, maybe.
Sure.
I don't know. I'm curious if there's gonna be more because yeah, I just have the bow and
Kunai. Yeah.
the kunai. So I am curious if there's gonna be some other unlockable.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
almost wonder if part of it being in there and having two different types is to beef up the world, so there's more things for you to pick up and do in the environment. Like I do wonder if that is part of it. Maybe they needed more to fill that out, but anyway, talking about, I don't think we need to go into a spoiler section. Talk about the story here. It's set up as a pretty classic, a revenge tale, as these games tend to be. But I'm liking the story enough. There's a couple characters that I, as you mentioned, like I have an investment into, and I want to see, where this trek takes me. I want to see where I'm
Yeah.
going. Not revolutionary, but it's hooked me enough. Yeah, honestly, I don't really have too much more to say than that, I guess.
No, exactly. Yeah, there was one character that like had come back from a certain point in the game. I won't say specifically, but it kind of like surprised me. I was like, oh my god, this is kind of interesting.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's another thing that just keeps surprising me is when the story has those moments, like whether it's the relationship with like the side character that you have in the game and just like your character's reactions to things that go on in the game. And I feel like it surprised me because I was just expecting like a cool art style with with some fun gameplay, but the story just keeps impressing me to the point that like I feel like when I reach the end of my trek to Yomi, it's gonna be a bit emotional. So,
Nice. Definitely.
but yeah.
Any other notes on this game from you?
I mean, as I was talking about earlier, and I love reading things in games. I really like the collectibles. So, like each one just has like a little text of just and like just things that I'd never known about. Like there's one like ring that just says like, oh, it's got like, it's kind of like a brass knuckle, but it has like spikes on it, so it's just like a
Okay.
really primitive weapon that like poor people would use back in the day. Or and then there's one where this is literally like a brass knuckle, but it's like an old horseshoe that like poor farmers
Oh,
would use
cool.
if they're like getting robbed. It's just like, oh, and like I can't use it, but it's still, it fleshes out the
Yeah.
world, gives me some information. I love those. In any game, I'm usually the one that just like wasting so much time just reading these collectibles, just like, oh, what does all these things do?
Man, it sounds like
Um,
they were thinking of having like melee combat at some point with these different like hand-to-hand combat types.
Yeah, it's like, why isn't that a weapon that I can pick up? That'd be pretty cool. Maybe in like a new game plus, you can use all these
Sure.
like primitive weapons.
Yeah, you
if you're
lose
just
all your gear
cheesing through
and
the
you just
game.
have
Yeah.
cheesy little hand
And then I saw that they have like a fourth difficulty that is unlocked. I imagine.
Yeah,
it'll
I
be
saw that
unlocked
too,
after
yeah.
you beat the game. I think I'm liking the game play enough that I will eventually play through that harder difficulty. I'm playing on the hardest difficulty right
Oh,
now.
nice.
And it's the type of game that I feel maybe like maybe the AI is a little bit more aggressive, but it's not that different from the difficulties. Maybe people are like a little bit spongier, their health wise, and maybe they just do more
Yeah.
damage. But I don't feel like I'm getting like flaming attacks from the ceiling because I'm on the harder difficulty. You know, like it's I feel like if you get a good base, like you should be able to make it through on the harder difficulties. But who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe that hard difficulty is like a one life thing.
even on well, so on hard, how many hits does it take to kill just like the basic fodder enemy? Because on normal, it's like
Oh, it's like two shots.
although
Yeah.
sometimes you'll get like a parry into like insta kill.
Yeah,
And on
so
easy, it's like 1 to 2. So it's like I didn't feel like it changed a whole lot. So yeah, is hard 2 as well. I guess they maybe
yeah,
doesn't
so
change
well,
much for that
actually
base
on
enemy.
like base enemies, it's like 2 heavy strikes kills them,
Okay.
and then maybe like 1 combo. Again, I kind of lean into that stun attack
Sure.
where I just go for the finisher, so that's kind of like a one shot combo. The armored enemies, that's where I find them a lot
Right.
spongier, but
Probably
again,
the
I just have
bosses are
that
a lot
stun
harder
attack
too.
that just ends up being a one shot. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't.
hmm
Like I feel like it doesn't take me out of the thematicness. I don't think that's a word, but I like that.
Thematicism, yeah.
Of the game. Yeah. No, I like mine, the thematicness.
What? I like mine.
But like I don't feel like, okay, I'm playing a video game now on hard difficulty where it's like you're playing World of Warcraft and it's like a raid boss where this health bar just doesn't go down even though I'm hitting
Right.
like 100
yeah.
times. Like I
No
still
bullet sponge,
feel
yeah.
in the world, like, you know, the immersion's there, which I think is important. Because that would kind of take me away from it. It's like, yeah, I want to play on the hard difficulty, but if it just feels like a raid boss now, like I don't feel like I'm in the world. So I think the difficulties are good. But yeah,
Yeah, I like that in Ghost of Tsushima, like the hardest difficulty, you actually dealt more damage, but then the
Yeah,
enemies also
exactly.
did too. So I think that works
Great
better
example.
for this kind of aesthetic of game. So I'm glad they did that.
No, absolutely. And yeah, I think that's the only thing I really
Cool.
had left to say on the game. I'm really really liking it. So
Mhm.
credits to you for putting it on my radar. I'm
Yeah,
so
definitely.
so happy with it. It's and so cheap, nice little indie title, $20. That was the sale, but it was like full price is probably like $24 or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is one I'll be seeing to the end. So if I have any huge revelations, I'll report back on that. But I think that pretty much does it for this week here over on Sidequest. Like I said, next week I'm going to be joined by Taylor Field, and we're going to be talking about Xbox and whatever else news pops this week. So that should be a fun one as well. Kirklin, thank you for joining me, and I'm sure you'll
Absolutely.
be back on soon enough. And
It's always
yeah,
a pleasure. Yes, always loves doing a one-on-one with you.
good stuff. I think this might be our shortest two-man cast of all time at a cool
So
hour
I think last week
37.
was like our shortest one ever, and it was like just under 2 hours. So.
We're getting lower and lower. Okay, everyone, thanks for listening. We will see you again next week.